Governor Jerry Brown is promoting California to the world's largest emerging market on his trade mission to China. We'll get an update from KXTV's John Myers in Shanghai.
He has signed formal agreements with the Chinese national government.
The state continues fighting to regain control of its beleaguered prison system after losing another round in court. Lawmakers are moving forward with new efforts to reduce gun violence. Plus, Sacramento basketball fans jump through more hoops to keep the NBA from letting the Kings leave town. And a sneak preview of the Exploratorium's high-tech new home on San Francisco's Embarcadero. Coming up next. Good evening. I'm Joshua Johnson of KQED News. Welcome to This Week in Northern California. Governor Brown is continuing his trade mission in China this weekend. So far, he has signed symbolic agreements on boosting trade between California and China and to help one of the world's most top polluting nations improve its air quality. Mr. Brown also announced a deal with Chinese investors for a major development near Oakland's Jack London Square. And he promoted high-speed rail while riding a bullet train from Beijing to Shanghai. Today, the governor presided over the reopening of California's Trade and Investment Office in Shanghai after 10 years of it being closed. Earlier, I spoke with John Myers, political editor for KXTV News 10. He is covering the trade mission for News 10 and KQED. John Myers, welcome.
Good to be with you, Joshua.
How's Governor Brown doing so far? Is he accomplishing the goals he set out to accomplish?
I think so. I mean, you know, Jerry Brown really had two goals, I would say, on this trade mission here to China. And we're in Shanghai. At this point, we're in the second of the cities that he's visiting. I think those two goals really were long-term and short-term. First, long-term. He wants to create a long-term relationship with China. More economic trade, more investment, more partnerships. He has signed formal agreements with the Chinese national government on economic issues and on environmental issues. And then I think there are short-term goals. The governor is looking for business deals to bring back home. In particular, one that was already announced on this trip about development of the Oakland waterfront, $1.5 billion, getting Chinese investors with the Bay Area group that's putting that together. So he has those two goals. I think he's been pretty successful, but I do think that Jerry Brown is going to measure this in the long term, not the short term, and what kind of economic activity that he can find will increase between China and back home in California.
John, what does China have that California wants and vice versa? What do we have that China wants?
What China has is it has money to invest. I mean, obviously, this is a country that is a world power that fared better in the economic downturns than most countries around the world. There is a very large, growing middle class here in China that has money, and I think if you're Jerry Brown, you want it in two forms. You want large money for investment projects like the deal we talked about in Oakland, and you want consumerism. You want them to buy California products, whether we're going to be talking about California wine on this trip or rice or other products.
Yeah, he seems to be very good at staying on message and staying away from a whole lot of politicking and pomp and ceremony, which tends to come along with a state visit. How has he dealt with that aspect of being among Chinese government delegates?
Well, he's certainly done very well, I think, with the pomp and circumstance, because that is not that's not a Jerry Brown strong suit. He disdains the trappings of office usually, and he seems to have enjoyed himself. Had a meeting with the premier of China in midweek, and of course all the other officials that he's talked to. As far as issues that maybe others think he should be talking about here, and most notably we're talking about issues in China on human rights issues, or cybersecurity, or piracy of entertainment items. The governor is steering clear of those. He has made a very narrow focus. He wants to talk about economic activity. There have been some criticisms back in California that maybe he should be addressing these issues and maybe talk a little tougher to Chinese officials. But I do think there's a healthy debate there about whether or not the governor would actually achieve anything out of that. And Jerry Brown is a guy at this stage in his life, I think, he turned 75 last week, where he is comfortable doing what he thinks is best and talking about what he wants to talk about.
Now, Governor Brown also traveled on China's high-speed rail system. Not a perfect system. It had a major fatal crash a few years ago, got the railway minister in trouble on corruption charges just this week. But it is a bullet train, and California is angling to build one of its own. How did Governor Brown use that occasion to talk about California's upcoming project?
Well, it was, I think there was a little bit of specific interest on Jerry Brown in riding that high-speed rail train. And then there was the symbolism, of course. I mean, it was a great photo op, right? Jerry Brown is the #1 cheerleader for high-speed rail in California, and he gets this chance to see what a train line is like. We rode from Beijing to Shanghai. It's an 800-mile trip, about a 5.5-hour trip. For people at home, it's the equivalent of going almost from the Oregon border to San Diego on high-speed trains. And the governor had a great time. I mean, he enjoyed himself. He was talking to the engineers from the Chinese company that helped build that train line. He asked them lots of detailed questions. And everywhere he looks in China, and this is really a fascinating thing, Joshua, everywhere that the governor looks and he talks to us, he talks about construction, about progress. And as he said to us on the train, he said, it seems like that we are pondering too much in California. We're navel gazing. We got to get going. We got to start building things. That's the message Jerry Brown seems to be pushing forward out of this trip.
So what happens now? How do we measure the value or the success of this trip?
Well, I think that's a little bit of in the eye of the beholder of what the value is. I mean, there are a couple of things I would point out. First, the trade office here in Shanghai that the state is opening is new and important because we haven't had any international trade offices since 2003. We closed down a number of them across the world. There was a lot of criticism that they were not effective. They weren't a good use of taxpayer dollars. This particular office is going to be funded by private donations organized by the Bay Area Council, the nonprofit business group that organized this trade delegation. So I don't think there'll be a taxpayer dollar issue here about this office in Shanghai, but I do get back to what I said earlier. I think the governor has this long-term interest, and I think that matches up with the Chinese culture too. I mean, as you hear time and again, the Chinese investors, they want to know you. They want to have a relationship, a friendship of some sort before you start talking business. And I think Jerry Brown is perfectly comfortable with setting the markers here that we could measure things in the distance. But as I said, I think it's in the eye of the beholder as to exactly how much more economic activity will come out of a trip like this. But we've got a few more days on it. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
John Myers, political editor for KXTV in Sacramento, joining us from Shanghai. John, xie. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua.
While Governor Brown was in China, a federal appeals court denied his request to lift a court-ordered cap on California's prison population. A 3-judge panel threatened him and other state officials with contempt of court. But Brown says he will fight all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court if he has to. Joining us to discuss this and the other stories in the week's news are Chuck Nevius, columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle, and Josh Richman, politics reporter for the Bay Area News Group. Chuck, Josh, welcome. Josh, why is Governor Brown being so defiant on this issue?
Well, he had declared victory, essentially, after getting the prison population significantly decreased through what has been called realignment, of spinning what had been state prison inmates out to county jails and other facilities in order to bring the population down very fast. And now he's sort of between a rock and a hard place. He's taking a lot of flack from his political foes for letting people out who subsequently may commit crimes. Every time there's one of these realignment people commits a new crime, there's a press release about it from somebody who's critical of it. And at the same time, he's got the courts breathing down his neck saying, you've made good progress, but you're not done yet. You're still at 150% of your prison's capacity, and you still have a major overcrowding problem and problem with the provision of mental and other health services.
It's a bit of a lose-lose. I mean, you can't go wrong with crime. It's going to be a bad thing no matter what. But I happen to have taken a couple of trips to San Quentin, and the crowding there is unbelievable. The size of those cells and the idea that you have 2 and 3 people in a place where you can touch both walls with your hands both sides have a really good point. So it's interesting to see where this will fall out.
And this has been going on since, that first ruling in 2009. They lost an earlier ruling in January, I believe, was the first round of this latest round.
Right.
Is this political fight, Chuck Nevius, do you think this political fight is worth it?
Yeah, I think it is. He's got it, so he's going to have to fight it no matter what. But I think, has there ever been a politician like Jerry Brown? I mean, he's just a fascinating guy. It's just like John said. He's 75 years old. He doesn't have another job in mind. He's going to say what he thinks. He's got this. He thinks this is the right idea. He feels like he's getting prisoners out of there. As ironically, San Francisco has some openings in the county jail. San Francisco, for once, it has a less crowded jail. So there's a possibility to make some movement on this, and it's a good issue. I don't know if it's a good political issue, but it's an issue he has to confront.
And let's make it clear, let's not have any illusions. California's prisons, regardless of whether the the court standard is the right one or the governor's standard is the right one, we're still wildly overcrowded.
Wildly overcrowded, yeah. One of the most overcrowded prison systems, the second most overcrowded prison system in the country, yeah.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on it, see whether or not he actually does decide to take this all the way to the Supreme Court. Moving on now to gun control. Congress is advancing bills for federal background checks and for stronger laws against gun trafficking. Josh, California already has some of the strictest gun control laws in the country. What would new federal laws possibly mean for us?
Not a whole lot, most likely. We already have the background check, universal background checks in California, which go further than even what has been reached in a compromise in Congress, in the Senate right now. That would not cover private person-to-person sales, as California already does. We have an assault weapons ban. We have a ban on large capacity magazines. We have a 10-day waiting period. These are things that Congress isn't even contemplating. So it's not going to have all that much effect here. It is playing out very messily in Congress. Just today we had 47 House Republicans write to Speaker Boehner urging him not to even bring the background check bill to a vote in the House. So even though the Democrats were able to break the filibuster in the Senate this week, it still faces a very uncertain future ahead. And then here in Sacramento, in California, we're looking to make those tightest in the nation laws even tighter. State Senate Democrats sort of consolidated their bills into a package this week that they call the Life-Saving Intelligent Firearms Enforcement Act, the Life Act.
Yeah.
There's always an acronym.
Got to have an acronym.
Got to have an acronym. But these are very controversial bills, some of them. One of them would essentially ban the sale and manufacture of any semi-automatic rifle with a detachable magazine, regardless of capacity, regardless of features. Another one would require background checks for ammunition sales. I mean, these are very far-reaching bills. I have to think it's going to be difficult, even with the Democratic supermajorities that we have in the legislature. There are some suburban and rural Democrats who are simply not going to vote for these, probably, but they are making a concerted push, and these bills do come to a first committee hearing next week.
Isn't the big issue, though, in California, the gun sales across state lines? Isn't that a big part of it in Nevada? And is there anything that nationally they're going to be able to do? We had a Chronicle reporter go to a gun show, and it was harrowing to hear these people walking down the aisle and say Glock for sale, $100. Right. See someone hand the guy $100, and he handed him the gun, and that was the transaction. That was the background check.
Right. Which isn't supposed to happen, but it does. They should be checking for ID to make sure you're in the state. Ironically, the proposal that's pending in Congress right now would actually permit gun dealers, not people at gun shows, but permit gun dealers to sell firearms across state lines, which they can't currently do without essentially sending to another dealer, licensed dealer in your home state and doing it that way.
It seems like we kind of have an ideal situation in some ways in California with all these far-reaching laws. I remember the Chris Rock joke that says we don't need gun control, we need bullet control. All bullets should cost $5,000. Is there anything for Congress to take away from California's experience briefly before we move on, or are we just too different from what Congress is dealing with for them to extrapolate anything?
I think there's practically no chance of Congress emulating the laws that we have here. There just doesn't seem to be the votes for it, even though most polls have shown majority support for an assault weapons ban, for a large capacity magazine ban. It's closer majorities, and it's probably not enough to carry the day nationally.
Gotcha. Well, moving on to a shootout of a very different kind, NBA officials are puzzling over whether the Kings should stay in Sacramento or whether they may leave for Seattle. The latest report suggests a local group of investors is still fighting to keep the Kings in town. Chuck Nevius, this is one of the weirdest sports stories that has ever happened.
This is not a sports story. It's a Gothic novel. It's we've got backstabbing, we've got riches, we've got people with double crossing. If we had a mysterious woman in red, we'd have the entire novel here. It's a very strange story. You're right. It's a small market. Sacramento has the lowest attendance in the league. Mm-hmm. It's a single market. In other words, we've only got one team there. They're passionate about their team, but they're not really making a go of it. Meanwhile, Seattle lost its team, the Supersonics. They won another team. They have some deep pocket guys, including Steve Ballmer, whose wealth is estimated at $15 billion.
CEO of Microsoft.
Former CEO of Microsoft. And he and another investor have made a terrific offer. But Kevin Johnson, the mayor of Sacramento, sees this as a line in the sand. He's going to keep him here, and he's lined up investors too.
The latest from the Sacramento Bee, I'm sorry to jump in, but the latest from the Sacramento Bee is that the head of the Seattle investment group, Chris Hansen, who is a Bay Area guy, by the way, is supposedly thinking about raising his bid for the Kings by $25 million. So the money keeps kicking back and forth. Why does Sacramento need a basketball team?
Well, I think, I was telling Josh earlier, I grew up in Colorado. At the time, the Denver Broncos were the only team in town. We had a baseball team that was AAA. The basketball team was ABA. That meant so much to that city. There was a sense of identity that the best teams in the NFL were going to come to our town and they're going to play. And that's what happens in Sacramento. They have a little bit of inferiority complex. I think that's probably safe to say. And that sense of this is who we are. We represent nationally as an NBA basketball team. It's a little bit of misplaced pride, but I think that's a big part of it. I don't think you can misplace the passion of it.
Even outside of Sacramento, there's some participation that's growing to try to keep the Kings, at least in Northern California. I mean, Chris Kelly, the former Facebook officer who ran for Attorney General a couple of years ago. Do you expect that if the Seattle offer keeps increasing, we're going to see more and more Californians get involved?
That's going to be the attempt. But I think the really important person that's gotten involved, and that is going to be the key to this whole thing, is David Stern, the commissioner of the NBA. Next week, the board of directors meets, and in theory, are going to sort this out. They're going to make a decision. He does not want to have teams move, franchises move on his watch. There have been 6 so far. He doesn't like it. And when he started this, he was not a big fan of the Sacramento offer. He didn't feel like they had the money. They have apparently demonstrated to him, to his satisfaction, the money is there. If that's the case, he doesn't want them to move. He's going to try to find something to do. The obvious choice would be to put an expansion team in Seattle. He said he's not going to do that either. But he's very invested in this. And oddly enough, there's an interesting connection, which is this guy, Vivek Ranadive, who's one of the investors in Sacramento, is Indian. Stern is convinced the game is going to go global. He was just in Mumbai telling Indian journalists that there would be an Indian player in the NBA in the next 5 years. So another reason, just another crazy twist to the whole thing, to keep them in Sacramento, make this guy happy, tie everything together.
And not necessarily as crazy as some might think. I mean, Jeremy Lin looked like a long shot before there was a Jeremy Lin.
Right.
Zoom out 30,000 feet before we move on to our next segment. There seems to be a lot of movement with sports arenas. The A's want to go to San Jose. The Warriors are coming over to San Francisco. The Kings could leave for Seattle. There's all this conversation about sports arenas. The 30,000-foot view of all of this, what does this mean for us in the Bay Area and Sacramento? How does this really touch our lives?
I blame the Giants.
Oh, for God's sake.
Well, here's the deal. Baseball was the leader. They were the first ones to realize that rather than build a big round ashtray and put a baseball stadium in it, you build something quirky and weird and a little fun, and the fans came like crazy.
A destination.
A destination. You've got a civic center. You've got a place that you go and you enjoy yourself, not just to see the game, but you enjoy the trappings, the area around it. Baseball hitched onto that right away. Football did some of it. You saw Jerry Jones in Dallas make it bigger and better and so forth. Now these arenas are asking for, they want internet, they want to have interconnections. We've got to have the latest state of the art to make that work. And an odd part of all this is the owners are a little worried about television, who are doing such a great job of televising the game. Why should I drive over and pay $50 for parking,
right,
$11 for nachos? You know, why don't I just stay at my home and watch the couch?
All right, we shall see what happens. A beloved science museum in San Francisco is preparing to reopen at its new home along the Embarcadero, speaking of tourist destinations, built at a cost of $300 million. The Exploratorium lets kids and adults explore science through hands-on exhibits. Here's a sneak peek of the new museum from correspondent Spencer Michaels of the PBS NewsHour.
The Exploratorium has a new home on the Embarcadero, with glorious views of San Francisco Bay and 150 new exhibits designed to entice kids and their parents into a love of science. Among those exhibits is a whimsical statue of Frank Oppenheimer, founder of the Exploratorium in 1969 and brother of J. Robert Oppenheimer, who pioneered the atomic bomb. Frank started the Exploratorium as a unique museum, a place that allowed visitors to interact with the exhibits. In their old quarters at the Palace of Fine Arts, you could touch everything, get your hands dirty, and experience scientific phenomena firsthand.
I've been a member for 12 years. And I love the Exploratorium. You can experiment, tinker with everything, and that's why I think this is great.
These exhibits and the aura around them inspired other science centers around the world, more than 600 of them. The Exploratorium essentially tested the theory that hands-on learning is the best way to teach and learn science, especially in a time when science and technology are sought-after national commodities.
One of the greatest things you can do as a staff member here is just to watch visitors and how they laugh and smile and enjoy interacting with the exhibits that we've created. Let that one drop a bit.
Paul Doherty, a senior staff scientist, translates his knowledge of physics into displays that he says help teach science. This exhibit is about the impact of copper on magnets.
As soon as a person comes over and begins to interact with it, that brings the exhibit to life, and if you watch, the person comes to life as well.
As the Exploratorium matured, it expanded, exporting its model of hands-on learning as far away as Turkey and even to monks in India. It outgrew its old quarters, and when it couldn't expand, sought space elsewhere. With much fanfare, the nonprofit organization launched its new, high-tech, solar-powered building on Pier 15 in San Francisco. They invited the press to preview the spectacular architecture and to showcase what they're calling a premier science education institution.
As successful as the Exploratorium has been in expanding and in inspiring other scientific centers, it raises a basic question. How do kids learn science, and do they need something besides school?
Rob Semper is associate director and a former university physicist.
School is very important. Reading textbooks is very important to learn science or to learn about nature, but having a real experience is also important. So you actually need both. And in fact, laboratories in schools often don't do enough to help people really experience some of the phenomenon on their own. A place like this can really help that happen.
Take this tinkering clock, for example. Can it teach kids science?
I've seen people stare at the mechanism, get really intrigued by how does that work? Why did it do it that way? They're spending time actively trying to figure things out. In school, often you're in a curriculum. It's being led by the teacher or by the curriculum. You go through different stages. Here you actually have to follow your own path, and that turns out to be really important because people really are the learners. People do the learning. It's an active process, and this place helps you do that.
But while big science centers like the Exploratorium can be exciting, some educators take a smaller, more concentrated approach to appeal to poor and underserved kids. Dan Sudrin runs the Mission Science Workshop in San Francisco, in a former high school auto shop. Much of the material available here he gathered himself on a tight budget. For the kids he serves, it's essentially free.
No other side. What we're doing is going into primarily poor neighborhoods and cities in California, starting with San Francisco, and just trying to get some space and trying to get some kids together and get some support.
Sudrin began his workshop 2 decades ago Today, a class of fourth graders walked a few blocks from nearby McKinley School to come learn about animal habitats.
Next we have defenses.
Most grade school teachers must cover every subject from history to art to science on their own. But fourth grade teacher Robert Savant says he needs more support if he's to teach science in a robust fashion.
I can teach and teach in class, and they'll get a portion, but here it really cements what I've taught in class.
Sudrin credits the Exploratorium for its pioneering approach and even for donating old exhibits to his outfit. But he says that smaller is better. He's started small science workshops in places like Greenfield, south of Salinas.
I'm working in east side of Salinas, down in Fresno County also. And those kids they might as well be 10,000 miles away from San Francisco.
These are poor rural areas.
They're poor rural areas. Fresno County is considered the Appalachia of California.
Sudrin's Mission Science Workshop is dependent largely on Sudrin himself. The Exploratorium is a different breed, a well-organized, well-funded, and well-designed center that also includes training to help teachers bring more hands-on science into their classrooms.
These teachers come here wanting to learn how to make their classrooms more hands-on, more inquiry-rich, and this museum is really all about that. So they come to us and we teach them literally how to take these large $50,000 exhibits and make small tabletop versions of them for their classrooms.
The goal of both science centers is the same, to inspire a keen interest in science by piquing the imaginations of visitors, children, parents, and teachers. And both have lasted long enough to show that they work.
That's Spencer Michaels reporting. The new Exploratorium opens on April 17th. We have more details on the museum and on the Mission Science Workshop online at kqed.org/thisweek. That is our broadcast for tonight. Thank you for watching. Thanks to our guests, Chuck Nevius of the San Francisco Chronicle and Josh Richmond of the Bay Area News Group. We'll continue our coverage of the governor's trade mission next week with a look at his efforts to get China on board with fighting climate change. Until we meet again, I'm Joshua Johnson of KQED News. Thank you for watching. Good night.